Tip. Today I will be interviewing Margaret for a little bit of Tip. So we will be interviewing him in the nano leaves, the green screen, the Trishaw, the Sound Lab, and just bringing him around. Look, here he comes.
Hello.
How did you get started up in the Clonmel Podcast?
It was before COVID. Yeah. Remember, COVID came along, and I decided when COVID hit to. A friend of mine recommended, why don't I bring out a podcast? Yeah. And it was called a really long-winded title, the Clonmel Community Podcast Update. Far too long. It was far too long. So I was basically letting people know what was open. Could I still go to the doctors? Could I get my hair done? Obviously not. Things like that. Could I get my car tax? That ran for 10 weeks. And then what happened was places started to open up. And I then thought, what about a podcast for Clonmel? I'd done a podcast course with a couple of friends of mine living out of Malta. And they said, what are you going to call it? I went, I don't know. What shall I call it? I had no idea. What do you call the last one? I told them. They started laughing. That's a very long-winded title. They said, why don't I call it the Clonmel Podcast? So I did. And hence, the Clonmel Podcast was born.
Why did you stop with the jobs?
So I'd done some research and I asked some people, when you listen to the podcast, do you listen to all of it or just the interview? And they hesitantly told me they used to skip forward and listen to the interview.
When I listen to the podcast, I just listen to the jobs.
Are you starting work early?
Why
are you looking for a job?
I tell people what is going to happen.
So what I decided to do was take out that part, leave in the interview, but however, I do share the jobs on the Clonmel Podcast social media page and also all the other things that are happening around Clonmel.
On this Trishaw, and pretty soon they're going to do around the sports stuff because with old people.
Is that why I'm in it? You're going to take me around the campus?
Maybe. Do you have any places that you don't like about Clonmel?
No, I love Clonmel. I think Clonmel is a great town, with some lovely, lovely people and has some great history behind it. Clonmel really, really does. So I love the whole town. I really do. I love Clonmel.
Marie McMahon.
Yes, at the Tipperary Museum of Hidden History, was it?
Your first podcast.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. I love the museum, do you?
Yeah, I do. Indeed.
My PlayStation 1 is in there.
Wow.
Yeah.
When you was doing the podcast in 30 years, did you know that you're going to do it?
No, not at all. See, also, if you think about it, 30 years ago, podcasts weren't really around.
No.
So my background is broadcasting and radio. But when I was 30, yeah.
Do you work in Cork or something like that?
Limerick.
Yeah,
I worked.
You do the morning show.
I still do. And I also worked for Tip, the local station here as well. But in going back to say in 30 years ago, I didn't have an idea what I wanted to do. To be honest, probably, I think, a motor mechanic when I was at school, until my car broke down one day and I couldn't fix it. And it was something silly like the battery lead was off, and after the AA people came out and I was really embarrassed. Right, I was going to night school and everything in college and couldn't even sort that out. Well, so that went out the window. And how the radio thing came along was by pure accident. Someone just said to me, they're looking for someone at the radio station, do you want to go? And I went, not really, I was too scared. And I was really, really scared doing it.
When did you first start the podcast in Clonmel?
Podcast in Clonmel was back in, it was 3.5 years ago. And the actual podcast itself started during COVID.
Yeah.
Who does that?
Yeah. I started interviewing during COVID.
And I remember, because I was interviewing people, I had to buy a 3-meter boom pole microphone because COVID was obviously here. And I was interviewing people with this big, huge, long mic. And everything was fine. I'd be talking like I'm talking to you. Yeah. Then I'd say, I'll just get it set up now. and I'd pull the mic out and extend it, and they were like, "Oh my God, what are you doing?" I could have pole vaulted over something. It was so big, it was huge.
Yeah.
But that was when I started it, and yes, and thank God here we are, still going strong.
What's going to happen this week on the podcast?
Okay, so this week on the podcast, there's a guy by the name of Billy Barrett coming on, and many years ago, Billy used to have a shop in town. So Billy will tell us about the shop that used to be there, and also he'll be talking about his days in Clonmel. So looking forward to that. That's this Friday.
Where did you grow up in Clonmel?
I didn't.
Oh.
I grew up in London, but both my parents are from Clonmel. So every summer when I was a child, I'd be coming over to Clonmel.
Oh.
And I'll be playing out around Father Matthew Terrace in Clonmel. Do you know where that is? Near the Showground Shopping Centre? Around there with all the other kids in the neighbourhood. And then the time would come and I'd have to go back to London, and I hated it. So when I felt I could do it, I left London and came over to Clonmel to live here.
What do you want to change about Clonmel?
I think I'd like to see more guards on the street.
Yes.
There's a lot of antisocial behaviour.
Yeah.
Needs to be sorted out.
Yeah.
We know about the drugs in town as well.
Yeah.
That has to be sorted. And I think the vacant properties, there's so many of them around Clonmel. I'd like to see
When I
businesses come into them.
go on a walk around town, because I go on a walk like every day nearly, and like one day I counted like empty spaces, and
There's a lot,
yeah,
isn't there? There's a lot.
they should turn them into Ukrainians.
Well, look, who knows? Who knows what will happen?
Yeah. Yeah.
You finish it.
What is your best advice you ever got to somebody you wasn't?
They didn't really give me any advice. I suppose when you're interviewing people, you're more so hearing their story. So it's not as if they came around and went, "Oh, that was rubbish, you want to
Yeah.
sort your grammar out or something," you know?
Yeah.
But they've always been very, very nice, you know? I tell you, advice my mother always gave them was always don't go anywhere with your hands hanging, you know? And just be a nice person through life and work as hard as you can.
Thank you for doing the interview, man.
Thank you, Dylan. And before we finish up, I have something for you.
A mug!
Yes, this is your Clonmel Podcast mug. There you go. That's yours.
I'm gonna change everything and talk about it. Follow the Clonmel Podcast on Instagram and Spotify. Bye for now!